Good morning. Hey, we got a full crowd. It was looking kind of thin a few minutes ago, so thanks for coming in. Welcome to 1 Million Cups. My name is Brian Azorski. I'm here with Britton, Courtney, Lance, and Milton. We're your volunteer organizers. And every week around this time at this location, we bring up a couple entrepreneurs. They share their story with us. They do about a 6-minute presentation, and then we have a chance to do Q&A for about 25 minutes. So if you're new to 1 Million Cups, raise your hand. I'd like to welcome you. Great. Thank you. Thank you. I hope you enjoy it. We've got a couple panelists here. I'd like to let them introduce themselves real quick and say hello. They're going to start off the questions after the presentations. Go ahead, Grant.
Hey. My name is Grant Gooding. I'm the CEO of a company called Proof Positioning. Our company helps entrepreneurs take the guesswork out of how to differentiate themselves in a market and build powerful brand positions. My background is in mergers and acquisitions and business evaluation. So those are the areas of expertise that I will be talking to as these wonderful presenters get started.
Good morning. I'm Jeff Kopakin. I am a business attorney. I work a lot with startups and entrepreneurs. My background prior to law school was in B2B wholesale distribution of auto parts, so working with large customers as well as family-owned businesses. And hopefully I can bring some of my expertise to the table today as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Hey, I'd like to welcome the Lee Summit DECA high school students. Welcome, you guys. And also, we've got the facilitators from the Kaufman Ice House. Welcome. Will you guys raise your hand? Welcome to you. Great to have you here. Let's go ahead and get started. We've got Dominique Davison with Planet Impact. Come on up. Get you started.
Am I on? I'm on. Okay. So thank you all for coming out, and thanks to 1 Million Cups for hosting Planet Impact this morning. I'm Dominique Davison, the CEO of Planet Impact, and my development team is also here. Can you guys stand up real quick? Wave your hands, Chris, Carrie, and okay, great. So the basic description of what Planet Impact does, it's a web application that integrates some pretty exciting emerging technologies. And even though we've needed this technology for quite some time, it hasn't been possible until now. And our goal is to mainstream sustainable design. We do this by, through this resource impact assessment tool that architects, I should be able to say that, I am one, architects, planners, and designers use in their processes of working with governments, in developing buildings and cities. So, but this is a disruptor to that process. So that's why we're really excited about it. And as I mentioned, I am an architect. I founded a firm about 10 years ago called Draw Architecture and Urban Design, based here in Kansas City, Missouri. And we really focus on trying to provide high performance design for our clients. And we found that we were getting really, really frustrated with the lack of tools that gave us really, really good data and metrics in order to make smarter decisions in our process. And so we're trying to rectify that issue. And so like many innovative designs and ideas, this product is really the intersection of opportunity and necessity. And the opportunity came about when I was discussing this frustration with a friend of mine who was really involved in the Google hackathon culture. And she said, why don't you just come out and build the tool that you need? And I thought, I don't know a thing about that, but I'm gonna try it. And so Google Fiber is really allowing us to do something that we've never been able to do before with this tool. On top of that, because of the gigabit speeds that are now available to us, the open data aspect of how Kansas City, Missouri is now publishing all kinds of information about how the city works is another intersection that has allowed us to do this completely new technology. How many of you are familiar with the concept of open data? Just a quick, okay, so a fair amount. Kansas City, Missouri, as well as about a dozen other cities around the country have created open data portals on their websites where they allow constituents to access information about GIS, mapping, and all kinds of information, just metrics about how the city's working. And that's something that used to have to pay a lot of money for and was very difficult to get. So this is huge. We're big supporters of open data. And so that opportunity is one that we're really trying to take advantage of. Now the need part that I was talking about is because of buildings and their impact on the environment. So buildings are responsible for over 44% of the US CO2 emissions by sector, so almost more than transportation and industry combined. And that's because buildings use more energy than those two sectors for the most part. And so this might come as a surprise to a lot of you, but this is something that we in the architecture community have actually known for about 10 years. And so that's why there's been a big push towards more sustainable, higher performing design. And we're really trying in the industry to move that curve down and reduce the impact on CO2 emissions and just resource impact in general in the building and construction industry. So, but how do you do that? And the tools that we have right now are really quite blunt. They're checklists, they're spreadsheets, right? And not something that is as impactful as we really need. So if we want to make sustainable design accessible, affordable, and achievable for everybody to be as impactful as possible, then we needed to really look at how that process works and how we can maximize our tool. And what we started to look at was this Pareto rule of how the first 20% of decisions that you're making in any kind of design process, this is actually a rule of economics that follows along a lot of industries, but those first 20% of decisions you're making when you have the least amount of information and data affect 80% of the resource impact of that project, 80% of that bottom line. And so what we're really trying to do is inflect that curve and level it out and front load as much data as we can into that first 20% of decisions that are being made. And so, you know, it's a $930 billion industry annually that we're talking about. And those investments have long-term impacts on all of our environments, right? Everything that every space that we live, eat, work, play in is affected by this. So we're just trying to be resourceful. So we're using that gigabit speed to integrate large amounts of data that previously weren't possible. So we're looking at integrating information about stormwater, we're looking at energy use, information from the city's open data portal about transportation, as well as water usage in our base version. And then we're also working on developing a version 2 pro version that will start to look at then from the energy usage, what's the greenhouse gas emission impact that's geospecific. So for this location, where your energy is being produced by what power company and utility, and then potential ROI, everything from building density and mix, things that affect quality of life. You know, the millennials are really interested in quality of life. They're really interested in wanting to know that where they live, they can walk somewhere and go get a cup of coffee and have a high quality of life. So here's what we've been working on as far as our scoring, and the idea is that you would get a score after you plug in your design from 0 to 100, 100 being the best you can possibly do, and 0 being not so good. So 60 is above average. And this is an immersive tool. So you're plugging in a 3D model that you can move around and really understand what it's going to look like, but then also how it's going to perform. And all of the data that makes that up is broken down for you. So you can see, okay, so here I'm getting a 40 in stormwater, that's not so great. These are all the aspects that affect that. And then you can do a what-if analysis and start sliding the bar around and seeing, well, if I improve that a little bit and I add a little bit more green space, what does that do to my overall score? And the same for all the other metrics and data sets that we're talking about. So we're starting here in Kansas City, Missouri, because this is where we kicked off Google Fiber, and we have open data as well. We're reaching out to other cities that are also gigabit cities, and to cities that have open data portals, with the goal of going national and then making cities one at a time net zero.
Great, thank you very much.
Questions now?
Yeah. All right, we're going to start with the Q&A, and Grant, why don't you get us started here?
So thank you for that presentation. I'm struggling just a little bit because, for most of the time during the, it was a very macro, but I'm kind of struggling to figure out what is it you do here.
Okay, great. Thanks for asking that question. So what we do, this is a plug-in for 3D modeling tools that architects, planners, designers already use, right? That plug-in front loads a ton of data that connects to APIs of, NOAA, U.S. Department of Energy, census data, the open data portal of the city, and brings in all that information. So when you're working in that 3D model, we know where you are, we know your longitude and your
So
latitude.
this is a software that, because they're building in Revit or whatever now, right?
Right, yeah.
And so they're already building 3D models in Revit, and this is a plugin that will essentially assess the environmental impacts of the design.
Correct.
Okay. So so it's all based on the scoring model, right? 1 to 100.
Yeah.
One of the things we were trying to figure out is so what is the significance of the score? Is this are the metrics used for the score? Is this a government
Yes.
scale?
Yeah. So the EPA already uses a 0 to 100 scale for Energy Star. So we're using that same scale, and we're tying into the same kind of algorithms that they use. Walk score is something that you might be familiar with, right? They use a 1 to 100 score. We're using that same metric. So it's one that's people are familiar with as far as the industry goes, and we're expanding on it, and we're hoping to become the new standard.
Thank you again for the presentation, and I know it's difficult to touch on everything that you want to in the time that you're given. I had a question regarding the economic impact, and is there a way to tie in maybe the savings that the buildings would have, and then also tax credits that would be available federally?
Yes, really glad you asked that question. So the return on investment module that we're talking about is part of the Pro version, would be able to show you. So it's a comparative analysis of, okay, if you just did base code, what everyone sort of expects, minimum you do, right? This is the cost of the project. And then if you push it further and you try other sustainable measures, it'll give you the return on investment for those, right? So planting trees, having a green roof, putting in more insulation, right? There might be some initial first costs, but what is the savings that you see long term? So it's more of a holistic view of development.
Such a lawyer question. So first question, and a two-part question here. Are there any competitors that are doing this?
We do have some competitors, none that are, let's see, I can slide to that. Here we go. Autodesk is one that is competing in the 3D modeling and energy analysis, and also a little bit some in daylight, but they're really expensive. Sorry, you're shaking your head. So
I couldn't remember if we saw this.
okay, all right. So all of our competitors are either very expensive or have a really steep learning curve and are hard to use. There are folks here locally who are using Envision Tomorrow now, from what I understand. The cost was pretty high, and it's also, even though it's an open, not an open data, but it appears to be transparent. It's just not a very easy tool to use at all. So, and then Safari is one who's also a plugin for SketchUp, but it's like $5,000 a seat per year. And our whole goal is to be easy, affordable, and accessible, because if we really want to achieve this, then we shouldn't be charging people hundreds of thousands of dollars to do it. So there's a setup charge for getting your city open data portal hooked up, which right now we're honing down those numbers of what the cost is for that. The first one's going to be more expensive. The second one's going to get a lot easier, especially because we're talking to folks nationally about open data standards. And once those are established, it'll be a lot easier and a lot quicker and a lot less expensive.
So my concern is there's already players in the space. How much of that market have they already gobbled up, right? Playing in someone else's market is always extremely expensive. And so what I'm looking for out of you is something that is objective, an objective clarification of why you're different. And what I heard was subjectivity, which people don't buy subjectivity because it's different to everybody. Easy, affordable, accessible, I believe is the trifecta. Those are all relative and mean different things to different people, right? So if you could say that objectively, the one thing that we do differently from all of these people that are already in the space is,
Well, we're less expensive, period. So, I mean, wouldn't that make it more attractive? And also we're doing testing with user groups, getting feedback from them about how to make it super intuitive. And I think the tools that really work in our industry and in general are the ones that people can pick up and just start using, and the other ones aren't.
maybe less expensive, right? So you're battling the concerns of if someone says that you're getting a better product for a less expensive price, you should be wary, right? So if you're less expensive, what are they sacrificing?
I don't think they're sacrificing anything, but we're a mission-driven company where we're trying to achieve our goal of mainstreaming, where I think other people's goals are to make money.
All right, I'll
Yeah.
So if I'm looking at this correctly, you basically have two customers for setup. Is that correct? So you have to get a city on board, and then the local architect firms would then license it from the city. Is that the model? Am I seeing it correctly?
Correct. So, well, one of the other things that we're doing is connecting to those APIs. We're creating live connections to that data. So the other people, they either need to hard program it in, right? And then it's there. Ours are live connections to those APIs so that the information you're getting is always as up to date as the sources, which are, pretty reputable sources.
Are your competitors doing that? Is it live? There's something you got.
Yeah. There we go. Okay, sorry.
All right, we're going to open it up to the audience. Here's our first question.
Yes.
Just get an idea, what is your market research with the with the governments out there? How have you found their price sensitivity, and how have you found their eagerness for your revenue model? Obviously, you've got different characteristics versus, per seat high charges, lower seat, setup.
Right.
How have they reacted, and what's that market research telling you from the government side?
So we're in conversations with a number of different municipality groups right now, and we're trying to really assess that and find that sweet spot. But the conversations are ongoing.
Got a question here up front. This sounds like a really great idea. I'm trying to figure out how it fits. So I got some clarity when I think it was Jeff talked about getting a city to collaborate and then architects buying seats so that they could do better building information modeling. So one of the things I'm trying to understand is how do you develop the business? In other words, what external forces are there, or what will you do to help cities understand that this is something they should be participating in, because they need to kick it off by making their data open, I'm assuming. And secondly, I suspect that there are more users than just architects to have access to this information. So could you tell us a little bit about how big in a city like Kansas City, what the community of users could be like other than the architects, which would be a really obvious segment in my mind?
Right. So second part of your question I'll answer first. So this, because of the 3D immersive aspect of it, is really a very potent community engagement tool. So we imagine that people will go out into the community and use it with students, with high school kids that are learning about science projects and want to understand how stormwater works in their community. So we think it has a wider base of applicability. And that's part of what's very exciting about how we're trying to make it so intuitive so that it could be used at that level. But at the same time, you can go in and specify certain data to the point where it's very advanced as far as the level of information you can get out of it. So it's just, yeah. But sorry, then the other part of your question was, oh, okay. So I answered it.
I've got another question for you here in the middle.
Hi. You said that you had this idea and then you weren't sure how to move forward with it. You don't have any experience developing software. Can you speak to that and the process that you went through to find a developer, or however that unfolded?
Sure. So we were part of the Google Hackathon back in March of 2013 now. And as part of the preparation, I was leading the team that was looking at a environmental planning tool, essentially. And we worked with Andrew Hyder from Code for America, who some of you might be familiar with. And he was really instrumental in kind of getting us started on this direction. We also had a number of other collaborators who are now advisory board members. And so it's been a kind of evolving team of understanding this technology and that it is a pretty, it's a unique thing. So trying to find the right people on that team that had the right level of experience was difficult. But I think we've got our ACE team now, and we're raring to go.
We got another question up front here.
Okay, I'm a former mayor and county commissioner, and in the outlying areas around Kansas City that doesn't have Google yet, can we use this system?
So it definitely works without Google Fiber. It just works a lot better with Google Fiber, sort of like, streaming your videos at home.
Okay.
So the performance is improved by gigabit speed. There's also the pro version and the base version. So if you're not hooked up with an open data portal yet, there's still information that would be useful for you. You just won't be able to optimize all the aspects of the
Be
pro
interesting,
version.
because I represented Platte County.
Oh, okay.
And we're growing, and especially with First and Second Creek, this would be really something that would be very good for the community. Have you presented at Mid-America Regional Council?
We have been talking to Tom Jacobs, so.
Excellent.
Yeah.
He's a great guy.
Yeah, he's fantastic. We're also, we're really reaching out nationally. Carrie, who's our Chief Creative Officer, she spoke just last week, actually, at NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology. We're a US Ignite team, so we'll be speaking in DC in March. We're Mozilla Foundation, we're supported by the Mozilla Foundation, so we have a lot of partners that we're working with. I should have mentioned Carrie, I think, is here earlier. Carrie, can you wave your hand? Okay, and then, yeah, so anyway, reaching.
Work with planning and.
Yeah.
Got
there's
a- Oh, I'm sorry. We got a question right over here. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
So what I'm curious about is has open data, is that required to use your product? And what are the percentage of cities and municipalities that actually have their data open like that?
So right now, there's about a little over a dozen cities that have open data, but it's definitely something that's snowballing, and a lot more people are getting on board. So we're at the front, end of that movement, essentially. It does work, but there's certain levels of data that you won't be able to achieve without the open data, right? So your transportation will only have walk score, but won't necessarily have all the information that you would have if you had access to the open data. So that's.
Got a question here in the middle for you.
Back on your product, do you lead into or does your scoring team give you a lead designation, in particularly the sustainable site side?
So what we can do is give you what the chances are that you're going to score pretty well under sites versus not, right? And in energy, those are the two really that are crossover with LEED, because we're not really getting into materials and resources and indoor air quality, that kind of thing. We can't give you an overall LEED score, but we can give you sort of, your chances are good, right, in those two categories.
I've got a quick question to your left, Dominique.
Yeah.
Hi. Unless I'm missing something, I thought Google Fiber was only available to businesses at the moment.
So Google Fiber.
Or I'm sorry, residential at the moment, not businesses. And so if your play is with businesses, I'm trying to understand the tie-in there with Google Fiber.
Google Fiber is going in businesses now around the community, so there are certain businesses that have access to it, and that's going to just continue to grow. And we were actually talking to Orange just yesterday, which is a tech company out of San Francisco, and their whole market is gigabit speed fiber, and so they're really excited about our product because then they can market it to their constituency, and they've got over 750,000 users. Sorry. Yeah.
Being developed as a plugin for 3D design tools. What design tools are you supporting?
Right now we're focusing on SketchUp because that's the one that's so ubiquitous and also meets our goal of being affordable and accessible to everybody. So you can download it for free, and it's super intuitive. But after we really nail SketchUp, then we'd want to move on to other 3D modeling tools.
One final question. What can we do as a community to help you?
Well, thank you very much. Relationships with municipalities is what we're really looking to build right now, and with government agencies so that we can make those connections and relationships. So that's what we're looking for.
Great. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you.
And now for our favorite time, announcements. If you haven't grabbed an announcement sheet in the back, please do so. Please email us if you have anything going on during the week. We do have Morgan Perry here from the Mid-Continent Public Library, here to do a small announcement about her small business boot camp.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. That was a very pleasant welcome. You don't have to be that nice to me, though. We'll get to that part later. If you notice on your sheets, there's an announcement about the Small Business Boot Camp Marketing Edition. Who in here has a marketing department? Raise your hand. You got a marketing department? That's not very many of you. For everybody else, you probably need marketing help. Come see us March 13th. Doors open at 8:30 in the morning. It's part of our new Square One, and it's just what it sounds like. It's a place to launch from. You're going to get lots of marketing help with sessions like The Dirty Truth About Social Media. Yeah, thank you. So come see us that day. It's completely free and funded by the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation. Thanks.
Our second presenter today is actually a 1 Million Cups alumni, so I'm really excited to have him back. He presented last year and is back to share some of his wins and some of his challenges over the past year. So I would like to welcome Stuart Lovelow of RFP 365.
Thank you. This crowd's different than when I was here last time. Different room, different crowd. I'm really glad to be back. Mainly because I spoke about 2 years ago, and that means we're still in business. So because I've spoke before, this is going to be a little bit different presentation than I think what we're used to. So let's get started here. I am going to spend 1 minute on the product. RFP 365 is a software platform that helps facilitate the request for proposal process. It helps issue and respond. That's it. Here's some highlights. 2013, we built the product. 2014, we grew the product in terms of sales. Particularly, we have 93 paying customers on 5 continents. We have cities, we have private companies, and we closed a round of funding last year, which means 2015 is a year of growth. So I was talking with our marketing director, Anna, and I was like, I want to go up there and talk about something other than just the product. I don't want to talk about just funding. What should I talk about? And she said, I don't know, whatever you want, but I want to know what failed between the time you spoke last and now, and what have you learned from it? And I said, well, it's a hard thing to digest. The product is completely different. Our pricing model is completely different. Our market is completely different. And our ideas on funding are completely different. So in theory, everything that we did was a failure, right? And being that that is not in my nature to accept, I'm like, how can I rephrase the notion of failure to make it less easier to swallow? And I thought, that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the changes that we made in the company aren't necessarily failures. They're how we look at those different aspects over time. The perception that we have over pricing or our product has completely changed, but it doesn't mean that we're failures at any point in time. What we think about right now with our product will be different than 2 years. It doesn't mean that what we're doing right now is a failure. So I want to briefly talk about the 4 main aspects and what changed and how we got there. The first thing in the product, this is the easy one, right? I mean, we're a software company, we build software. Our idea of a MVP, a minimal viable product, the idea of what we thought was a minimal viable product was a terrible idea. We're doing B2B software, and we are selling into very large enterprises, and their idea of, I want the minimal thing that works doesn't exist. We had to get up to feature parity with the rest of the marketplace really quickly, and until we did that, we found out our minimal viable product was our production grade product. There was very little difference between the two. So it just took time. It took 2 years of development in order to get up to that speed. The next one, this is a really big deal. We came in, we presented, hey, everyone, if you're not familiar with the RFP process, I'm really sorry. But we thought every vertical in the world, every country in the world does an RFP. Our market is so big, we're gonna be amazing. And then someone asked us, well, who's the first person you're going to call? And we're like, it could be anyone. That's not an answer. We've whittled our market down to 450 companies in the US that we want to hit. It's really, really hard to do. So we found out knowing our market is much, much greater than knowing what a market size is. The third thing, pricing, never going to be correct. Our pricing will always be wrong. Do you do value-based pricing? Do you do user seats? Do you do volume? There is no real right answer. The big thing to know is that when we first started, we thought we'd do people would just sign up and pay $50 a month and we'd have 10,000 users and it'd all be recurring revenue and everyone's happy. And that just didn't happen, right? So we started changing that philosophy, and we realized everyone who was paying us money we'd talk to, we'd given a demo to. So we took our prices, multiplied them times 10, and then we started getting customers. We realized the perceived value, our perceived value of our software increased as our price went up. And so we're no longer the cheap one on the market. We do not believe in that. And so, right now we do much more B2B sales model to where we actually have sales guys. But in a couple years from now, the notion of that doesn't even make sense if you can move to this notion of a marketplace. So, I mean, we know where we are now is not going to be where we are in a year from now. And the last one is really important. And I know there'll be a lot of questions on this. But when we started this company, we did not want to raise money. I started this with my best friend. We wanted to be around and hang out and be able to go to a baseball game in the afternoon, right? We wanted this lifestyle brand. But our customers kept asking us to get bigger. We lost some major accounts who people had told us, you built a better mousetrap, awesome. We cannot use 2 guys in an office for this Fortune 500 company. We lost, and the idea of raising money not only validates yourself as a company, provides stability, provides more infrastructure, and that helps get from this notion of, how do I move from only having early adopters as a customer up to the enterprise grade? So that notion is time, that notion is money, and so funding for us was what people were asking us to do, and so therefore we went out and did that. We just closed $1 million round February 15, so just a few weeks ago. So, thank you. And so, as I was talking with Anna a little bit more, she's like, and if you have time left, what did you do right? And the answer to that is that there's really no more time left. But the last thing I want to say is, really, Dave and I struggled with a lot of things all throughout the years, and it all went back to this one notion of, just don't die. Do whatever it takes. You have to constantly change. You have to constantly adapt. Just don't die, and eventually, good things happen. So, that's all I have. What kind of questions do we have?
Thank you, Stuart. Okay, we'll get started with Jeff.
Yeah, thank you for that. I unfortunately was not here for your last presentation. But,
it wasn't that great, so you're probably lucky.
but I think there is something to be said if you've kind of pivoted in your market and kind of your whole idea of your company. There would have been a lot of value to see your failure last time. So
yeah, and it's funny. The word pivot is an interesting word, right? Our core company hasn't pivoted, right? It's just like everything around the product is the only thing that really hasn't pivoted. It's moving from a product-based company to a company, right? We had to pivot all the surrounding pieces, and that's one of the big learning things that we took out of the last couple of years.
Yeah, and congratulations on the funding. A couple weeks ago, what are you doing here? You should be on a beach or something, right?
Right. And we're done.
Yeah, exactly.
We're done, right? We raised money. It's over.
I was wondering if you could tell a little bit about that experience, though, of trying to raise the funding and what you learned most about your company during that process.
Yeah. It's interesting that you pointed out what we learned most throughout that process about the company. You learn a lot about yourself, and you learn a lot about the company. So what I didn't realize was, as you're talking to either a VC or an angel fund or individuals, everyone has their core investment philosophies. One of the first people we talked to, they were like, hey, we love the idea of your product. We kind of do this dual-sided marketplace of we sell to issuers, we sell to responders, and they thought, hey, if you just chop off one whole half of your business, we'll give you money. We like the responding to RFPs because that's a revenue driving. The RFP issuing is a cost center. We don't invest philosophically about cost centers, things that cost companies money. You try and minimize cost, not increase. Whereas responding to RFPs helps drive revenue. You tend to spend as much money as you want. So I think that notion of, we hadn't really thought that, man, these investors are really, really smart. They have a lot of really, really good insight into what they look for. And so a lot of their comments helped us drive the direction of where our product was, particularly when we talk about market. That was a lot of things were hitting at the exact same time. Looking for money, we landed a really, really big contract with a really big company here in town. And things just started hitting. And as we really tried to focus, who is our market? Who is our market? We like, oh, what is the shortest sales cycle? What is the highest sort of revenue we can get? What's the highest volume of RFP? What's the least amount of work? And what's, who has the potential to grow the most? And we're like, this just all makes sense. And so that market really came out into play as we were looking for money as well.
I really want to thank you for coming back. And I hope everybody was really paying attention because there were some really excellent learning moments in here. And specifically how you changed your value proposition, right? When entrepreneurs come into the market and they have a product, like you said, your product is fairly unchanged, but understanding the market fit was one of the big changes. And so everybody wants to come in and we'll just charge less money because that's the most effective way to get traction. And that's not the case. And you figured that out. And that's a huge learning moment for everyone. And I also, if I could call an audible here, can I get you to go back a couple slides? Because you said something here that is extraordinarily impactful and everybody needs to have a takeaway. Go back to the slide about your market. Right here. People take a picture of that with your phones, okay? Because everybody wants to jump into a market, right? And there's $1 billion in this market, guys, and we just need to get a piece of it. That's not what it's about. It's about knowing your market. And the fact that you've been able to identify we have 450 targets that we want to go after would terrify the hell out of some people. We can only talk to 450 people? It might take you your whole life to close half those, right? And build a very successful company. That is not a terrifying number, right? And so this is a humongous takeaway, and I really want to appreciate you calling this out. And it shows the great amount of insight that you've been able to achieve from just a couple years, well, I guess a year ago, to where you are now. So congratulations, and thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you very much. Any other questions?
We're opening it up to the audience.
Yeah.
Jeff.
Mr. Shackelford.
At the risk of a self-fulfilling plug, talk about all the resources you've used here along your journey.
Absolutely. And I guess first and foremost, we had to take advantage of everything we possibly could. That being Digital Sandbox was one of the resources we took advantage of. Very, very, and I'll even go back, it wasn't just a monetary benefit that we got from them, which it was a grant, and it was great. As we were pitching them.
You're right, let's be honest. You came back 3 times.
3 times.
To the Digital Sandbox, okay? But every time you came back, the things that we suggested they work on, they hit and they move forward. And the SBTDC and the coaches.
I mean, I'll even go back to one more aspect of our pricing really came out of talks at Sandbox. Like, that was where we started thinking, it's just wrong, because they kept saying, you're never gonna make money. You can't make money at 50, 100, $200 a month. Like, that's just not gonna work. Charge $25,000 for it, and you will get more interest. And we thought, that seems crazy, but charge $25,000, and all of a sudden people are like, oh, maybe that does work. So not just the 25, the money we got from the grant, it helped really started driving us and started thinking more about things. But both my co-partner, my co-founder Dave Holson, who's not here today, as he is on doing demos right now, trying to sell stuff. We both went through UMKC's eScholars program. It was a year-long group. We've leveraged the Small Business Technology Center. We have leveraged other grants called Workforce Partners, which helped bring unemployed people, and we could train them up, and they helped offset the salaries. We're in the Kansas City Startup Village. I can't necessarily emphasize the impact that has had on our business. It has been phenomenal to be around like-minded people who are going through the exact same challenges that we are at every given stage, especially during growth of marketing, especially during funding. There were some number of really, really key guys that I leveraged really heavily in terms of what are the steps? Is this normal? Who do I talk to? The village was really important to us. So, I mean, a lot of things throughout the community, but that took a lot of effort, right? It took a lot of effort on our side in order to seek them, to do a lot of the paperwork, to do a lot of the presentations, getting rejected multiple times by Jeff and crew. Right. But.
Okay, go ahead.
Question here to your left.
Stuart, continuing on the It Takes a Village theme, can you talk about the city, Kansas City, Missouri's innovation partnership and the work you've been doing with the city?
Yeah. So Kansas City Innovation Partners, a bunch of smaller technology companies that help transform some of the processes to which the city does. The city sends out lots of RFPs. We have software that manages RFPs. It was a very natural fit. And I don't know if the ink is dry yet, but I know that we just signed a contract with the city, and we'll be doing all of the city's Kansas City, Missouri's RFPs. And it's the first really big successful partnership between the Innovation Partners program and an actual company that grew out and leveraging our stuff as a mainstay in the city operations. And so hopefully there's a little more press on that coming out very soon, which I think there will be. But it's been a really good partnership for us. The city's been a really good driver into we aren't experts in how municipalities operate, what are their different rules and regulations we have to abide by, how can we develop that in? And the city has, for almost 9 months, we've been working with them in terms of how do we get certain things into our platform, how do we accommodate just the different needs.
Got it.
Stu, I'd like you to talk about something. I think one of the most difficult parts to growing a business is staying disciplined because opportunities come at you, and every time you get a piece of insight from someone, you start to rethink things.
Right.
Can you talk about, and the fact that you haven't changed your product, I think says a lot to that. Can you talk about some of the sort of challenges that have come up from a discipline perspective? Like, we could have gone down this road, but we didn't, here's why.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is my somewhere between third and fourth companies. A couple of them kind of blended together for a little bit. And I can't tell you, every single week we have something big come through our doors. It's an association with 50,000 companies. We want to do X. And we're like, great. Like, everyone tries to steer us a little bit different. And the only one piece of advice that I have had to, almost hammer on my co-founder's head, Dave, was that no partnerships will ever happen without skin in the game on both sides. And this was something I remember my stepdad, Max, who's here today, he told me this 8 years ago. And the monetary amount doesn't matter. The amount is that there's something going in. And so our biggest partnership in town is with a really big company here on the plaza that will be announced really soon. They wanted us to go down this other direction. We said, that is great, but that's going to take us 6 months of work. We could do it. It's a natural extension to the platform, but we need you guys to pay for it. And we need you to pay for most all of it. And they're like, well, we'll use it when you build it. And we said, that's not how it works. I know you'll use it, but we're going to be spending a lot of time. So it took 4 months of, this is a big enterprise company. It took 4 months of contract negotiations and legal departments in. And by that one core philosophy, we're going to make you guys pay for things that you want to do. It not only helps us as a small company, it's really impactful to get all that money up front. They're more invested in it. The partnership is much more likely to succeed. And in the end, it does help our product base. But for them, it's a nominal amount of money. But it shows trust. And it shows that we're not just a bunch of kids that you can push to the side and we'll do whatever we ask.
We've got a question here in the middle for you.
How are you, Stu?
All right.
You're doing great.
I'm good.
I want to ask about you and Dave. You guys are good friends for a long time,
Yep.
and to survive not only starting up, but then now a couple of years later, continuing to work well together. What's been the I guess, key? What's the ability? What's made it so you can do that?
Yeah. So for those of you who didn't see our first presentation, Dave and I have known each other since college. We were, the kind of story was we were on a motorcycle tour through Southeast Vietnam a number of years ago, and we had kind of been both in this world. He was issuing RFPs on behalf of big companies, I was responding, and we kind of just had a whole bunch of time to sit and think on the back of a motorcycle, all day long. And so starting a company is completely different. Like people always say, your co-founders are like, it's another relationship. And I was like, well, this isn't gonna be a big deal. I've known Dave for 18 years. But it completely changed the dynamic of our friendship. It's funny, there'd be times 4 months would go by and I'm like, that's weird, Dave. You haven't come over for pizza and beers. We haven't gone out to hang out, right? Like it changed the relationship to much more business oriented. I sat 3 feet staring at him every day across from him, and I was like, well, I no longer have to go out in order to catch up on the last week or the last 2 weeks I haven't seen you. I just get it real time. And so I know everything that's going on with him. We just don't do as much socially. But we try and, just like any real relationship, you have to set a time aside for you guys together. We go out about once a month. We've done trips to the lake together. We've done car trips just to Columbia for a night. A lot of things just to try and keep us that friendship there as well, because so much of the conversation is dominated around the company.
Question here on the left.
Yeah.
Yes, good morning. Congratulations on your RFP with the city. I have a question. When you're writing those for the city, how do you ensure that the city uses local vendors such as contractors, construction, furniture, design teams, architects, et cetera? How do you ensure that when you're writing that RFP that the city is going to use local vendors? Because I've responded to many RFP before, and half the time they're using people from out of town. They're not keeping local dollars locally.
It's a great question. And so because I didn't spend a whole lot of time on what our software platform does, the platform helps the city write their own RFPs better. So you don't have to send out an Excel or a Word document through email to vendors, and then you have to get them all back. It is the platform which manages that communication back and forth. So we don't actually write the RFPs for any of our clients. The same RFP would go through. It's just a much easier, streamlined process. So that's still back onto the city for that question.
Stu, we got a question right here.
Hey, Stu.
Hi.
So I know there are a ton of really great resources for early stage companies in Kansas City, and you've used most of them. But now you're getting to a stage in your development where I think the programs and the resources thin out a bit. So what are you struggling with? What's your learning curve right now as you're struggling to scale?
First and foremost, Dave and I didn't really know how to do sales or marketing. I mean, that sounds, we did it, but we didn't know how to do it well. And the resources of going from a 2-man operation up to 7 or 9 people in a couple months is actually really daunting. All we can do is hire really smart people and give them what they need to succeed, and we all kind of learn. I feel like we're back at step 1 of where we were a couple years ago, right? Like we're doing a whole bunch of new things, and they're all going to fail. But they're not failing right now. It's that perspective thing. Right now, we're doing the best that we can, and it's right. But in a year from now, as we sit back and analyze and learn, it will be different. So in terms of resources, I find myself, it's meeting a whole lot of people who have done the individual pieces that we need. Like instead of, how do I build a product in a company? It's, how do I do marketing? And I want to talk to someone in the city who's done marketing. So it's much, much more on a one-to-one level. How do I do business dev? How do I do X, Y, Z? Because there isn't a collective body of people trying to teach that once you're out of the incubator stage, right, into this, there are accelerator stages, and that's kind of a gap that we have here in the city.
Got a question for you here in the middle.
Thank you for presenting.
Oh, you're welcome.
The 450 companies or prospects that you mentioned, are you focused on a particular vertical market segment, or how did you narrow it down to that?
We are focused on a niche of a vertical. And so, so we get customers in two ways. People come to us, we'll never say no, right? We're just finding that what we're really focused on right now, the little sliver is in the benefits consulting space. So every company in the US says, oh, I have to provide all my employees dental, vision, health, disability, and every year that package of insurance benefits goes out to market to get rebid, and that vehicle that does that is through an RFP. And what that does is it gives us a finite number of large brokers who do this, and it gives us a finite number of vendors that they go to. In our platform, because we can monetize both sides of the equation, whenever we have a finite list of issuers and a finite list of vendors, our propensity to convert the vendors into paying customers like quadruples. So because we found this little microcosm of people that really there's 450 vendors and there's like 1,100 different responders, that pool of 1,500 people represents like $100 million of opportunity because these people getting RFPs will get multiple through our system. They're much more likely to pay for some other analytics and some other data that they can receive from the RFP. So it took a really long time. It took a really large client. It took a really large partnership that we made. We just kind of listened to who was speaking the loudest and who had the greatest need. And this one company does thousands of RFP a year. I mean, every large company in the US does it every year. And so they just hire these 450 people to do it. So that's kind of what we're focused on in terms of our outbound sales effort. We still definitely have an inbound effort as well, and that's kind of all over the map of all the different countries and verticals.
Question in the front.
Question in the front, right here.
Yes, Marcus?
Stuart Ludlow, fantastic presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing it back to the 1MC roots.
No.
I think that was really good. This is the day of old. I love it. So I want to go granular again. So you've shared a lot of lessons from a company perspective, but you as an entrepreneur are obviously going through changes, and demands on you as the leader of this company become more and more. So there's 24 hours in a day. We all have work-life balance. You've kind of touched with me a little bit in the past about things that you do differently now. Can you share other tips with everyone else that you're changing so that you can manage your daily life?
That is the one aspect I think I'm completely failing at right now. I mean, that's the truth. I have two little kids. I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. And I get them up in the morning. I pick them up from school from 5 o'clock to about 8:30. They don't know Daddy has a job. And so what that means is that, once they go down for bed, it's my time again. Until I find a better balance of how to do this, it's a lot of sleep deprivation and self-sacrifice. I don't want the people around me to suffer because I have more things on my plate than I did 6 months ago. And so I'm in a complete learning curve, and it's challenging. I will say the part of I learned most about myself was, especially during the funding piece, was that the notion of highs and lows of an entrepreneur, that piece drove me to highs and lows that I didn't know existed. A lot of sleepless nights, a lot of anxiety built up when is our lead gonna back out and we have to find another semi-lead and we have to go and raise 200 grand to put pressure to negotiate. Like these things were really stressful. And I realized that personally I didn't necessarily cope with them very well. And so a lot of stress reducing things I'm looking into more. And because I know they're gonna creep up more now that we have other employees and meeting payroll, and we realize our burn rate is now like crazy amount of money every month. So to answer your question, I wish I had a better answer, and this is something that I'm struggling with, and hopefully we'll figure out. More yoga, yeah.
Awesome. Stuart, thank you so much for coming
Absolutely.
out, sharing
Thank
your
you,
story.
everyone.
No, you're good. You're good. Even though you're a savvy veteran, we always want to ask, what can we continue to do to help you?
Yeah, absolutely. No, we, You know, everyone comes up here, I think that notion of, hey, if you do RFPs, come talk to me. So sales is always a big key. But the partnerships that we're forming in the city, which can help drive the next generation of our product, which can help do a lot of validation of us as a company, right? Getting a Sprint or a DST or a Cerner or some big name behind who will go and vouch for you as a company helps bridge that gap from your early adopter phase up into your maturity phase, and a lot of it is marketplace noise. And so we really need some larger entity to kind of give us a shot and help get behind and market and support us as a company.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you.
All right, that wraps it up for today. Hope to see everybody back again next week, same time. If you would like to present, just go to kansascity.1millioncups.com. There's an Apply Now button, and we'd love to see you up here. Have a good one.